volume on the sound. I think I turned them off.
I'll just mute it. Where are you, by the way?
It was on YouTube. Good morning, everyone. It's nice to see Reverend Kobata joining us this morning as our guest speaker. And I wanted to make sure he knew that he's live and being seen by millions and millions of people throughout the world right at this moment. Today is a very special day because not only because Kobata is with us, but today is our Ohigan service, where we observe the spring equinox. Yesterday was the official day of the spring equinox. And as many of you know, typically we emphasize the 6 paramitas during this time. It is a time, though, I believe, when we become fully aware of nature and the world changing. The changes that we see in nature are a reminder to us that the world is constantly moving and changing. And Ohigan marks a time for us when we're moving from one season to another. But it is a good reminder to us that the world is constantly moving and changing all the time. For today's service, I'd like to begin with a opening reading. If you please join me in Gasho. With tears falling on the sacred streams of the shrine, I take parting with a hope someday to return. Namo Amida Butsu.
Namo Amida Butsu.
Namo Amida Butsu.
Namo.
Namo Amida Butsu. Namo Amida Butsu. Namo Amida Butsu. Thank you. Now I'd like to ask all of you to, in your homes, make sure that your butsudans are open, that you have a candle lit, some incense burning as we begin the sutra chanting. I'll begin with the Sambujo, followed by the Hyobyakumon, or a dedication reading, and then the Sambutsuge. Namandos, 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 namandos. Today, on this occasion of the Watsonville, Monterey, and Salinas Spring Ohigan service, the Sangha has reverently come before Amida Buddha. With deepest reverence and thankfulness for the all-embracing wisdom and compassion of Amida, we reaffirm the three homages. I go to the Buddha for guidance. I go to the Dharma for guidance. I go to the Sangha for guidance. Namo Kia Boots, Namo Kia Ho, Namo Kia Soul.
Jipo se son chie muge Yoryo shi son chiga shingyo Keryo shin shi shoku no kuchu Kagyo shojin ninju fuke
Thank you very much, everyone. I'm going to take a little sip of water here. Okay, I'd like now to ask everyone to please join me in the Gatha Shinshu Shuka. And if you have your large purple service book or the PDF of that, which you can find on our website, it's found on page 216. Thank you. And I'd like to now ask you to join me in reading Threefold Refuge. And again, if you're using our Purple Service Book, it's on page 10. Difficult is it to receive a human form, now we are living it. Difficult is it to hear the Dharma of the Buddha, now we hear it. If we do not cross over to the truth in the present life, in what life shall we cross over to? Let us with sincerity and true reverence take refuge in the three treasures of the truth. I take refuge in the Buddha. We, together with all sentient beings, awaken to the great way of enlightenment and to the unsurpassed intent of Amida Buddha. I take refuge in the Dharma. May we, together with all sentient beings, enter the storehouse of the Dharma, becoming like the wisdom ocean. I take refuge in the Sangha. May we, together with all sentient beings, become units in true accord, in harmony with all things. The peerless, profound, and wondrous Dharma is rare to encounter, even in many hundreds and thousands of kalpas. Now we are privileged to hear and receive it. Let us thoroughly understand the true meaning of the Tathagata's teachings. Sankhya-mon, Ninjin ukegatashi ima sudeni yuku, Buppo kikigatashi ima sudeni kiku. Kono konjo ni mukate dosei zumba, sarani izure no sho ni mukate ka kono mi o dosen. Daishu morotomo ni shishin ni sambo ni kieshi tate matsuru beshi. Mizu kara butsu ni kieshi tate matsuru. Masa ni naga waku wa shujo to tomo ni daido wo taige shite mujo yoko san. Mizu kara ho ni kieshi tate matsuru. Masa ni naga waku wa shujo to tomo ni gaku kyozo ni irite chie umi no kotoku naran. Mizu kara so ni kieshi tate matsuru. Masa ni naga waku wa shujo to tomo ni daishu wo tori shite isai mugen naran. Mujo jinjin mimyo no ho wa yaku sen mango ni mo ayo koto katashi. Ware ima kenmon shi juji shuru ko atari. Negawaku wa Jurai no Shinjitsu Gyoge Shitate Matsuran. Namman Dabas, Namman Dabas, Namman Dabas. Thank you very much, everyone. Once again, good morning, everyone. I hope you're all doing well, staying healthy, staying safe. And I appreciate all of you who are tuning in today for our spring Ohigan service. Today, it's my great honor to introduce to you our guest speaker, Reverend Ron Ken Kobata, Shaku Ken Gu. Reverend Kobata was born 1947 in Ogden, Utah on November 5th. He was raised in San Francisco. He graduated from UC Berkeley with a bachelor's degree in religious studies. He then received his master's degree from the Institute of Buddhist Studies. Reverend Kobata received his Tokudo in March of 1974 and his Kyoshi in March of 1974 as well. His Kaikyoshi certification then came in April of 1975. Reverend Kobata's first assignment with the Buddhist Churches of America was in 1975 at the White River Buddhist Temple, where he served until 1979. And then he also took care of the Tacoma Buddhist Temple as a supervisor in 78 and 79. And then Reverend Kobata moved to Hawaii, where he resided and was the minister at the Hawaii Betsuin from 1981 until 83. He then moved to Kahului, Honganji, and Maui from 1983 to 2001. And then after that to Makawao, Honganji, and Maui from 2001 to 2005. He returned to I was going to say United States, but Hawaii is United States as well, but he returned to the mainland, to the Buddhist Churches of America, where he was executive assistant to the bishop between 2005 and 2009, and he also served as the English editor of the Wheeler Dharma, 2005 to 13. And then his final assignment was in 2009 to the Buddhist Church of San Francisco, where he retired in August of 2020. Reverend Kobata's wife, Sayoko, and his three children are actually throughout the places in the world, but his daughter is in Vancouver, his one daughter in Portland, and then a daughter in Kyoto, Japan. Just to add a little bit about Reverend Kabata, my association with him goes back so far. I don't know if he remembers, but I met him at a JACL track meet in San Francisco. And Reverend Kabata was very active in the community in San Francisco, and we got to know each other. And then we again were able to spend time together during his time at the Institute of Buddhist Studies when I was taking summer sessions there. And then while studying in Japan, I was there from 78 to 81. Reverend Kabata came and spent some time in Kyoto studying as well. So our relationship goes back a long time. He's a good friend. He's not only a colleague, but a good friend and one of my golf buddies. So it's a pleasure for me to have Reverend Kabata here today as our guest speaker. With that sort of extended introduction, Reverend Kabata.
Okay. Morning. Aloha. Ohio gozaimasu. It's nice to be here. And thank you to Reverend Jay for inviting me to be part of this virtual experience that I think, well, it's been a year. So I'm hoping that those of you who have chosen to participate in these types of engagements are a little more comfortable and familiar with this unprecedented new way of being together in the Sangha. I'd like to begin with the opening reflection with a quote of a verse. I don't know where I picked it up, but I've been carrying it around for years. But it's by a Reverend Daiei Kaneko. And I'm going to pull that up right now and see if we're able to access it. Let's see. Let's see. How do I do this? Oh, files. Okay. Okay. Well. Oh. I guess I can't do it. Or I'm looking for it now. Sorry. Well, I guess, well, I'm not going anywhere, so I'll just keep working at this.
Are you having trouble?
I'm trying to locate the file. Let's see. All right. Well, I guess one of the 6 paramitas is patience. So, okay, we'll try to work with this and see if I can figure out where this. Oh, here, maybe this is it. Let's see. Okay, here we go. Is that showing up? Oh. Okay, here we go. Okay. Are my technical assistants able to confirm that the text is showing? No? Hello? Okay, Jay, is that showing up? Okay,
Yes, thank you, Sensei.
okay, here we go. We could join in Gasho.
Yes.
That which gives meaning
Uh-huh.
human existence is the Pure Land. That which binds the Pure Land to human existence is the primal vow. That which manifests the primal vow in human existence is the Nembutsu. That which is inwardly sensed in human existence by virtue of the Nembutsu is light. Namo Amida Butsu. 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 Okay, so thank you for your patience and joining us today for the, what is it, the Watsonville, Monterey Peninsula, and Salinas Sanghas. Yeah, I saw something about tri-temple gathering. So, okay, give me any signals if something's not functioning. Okay, so anyway, thanks again for joining me, because otherwise I'd be just staring here, sitting here staring at the screen and wondering what's going on. But as I think about this time of the year and these traditions that we're kind of conditioned or taught to follow, I think of the spring and the other partner observance of the fall equinox as kind of a metaphor of life, the cycles of life, whereas the spring of birth and the fall of death. So that's where we're living, in between birth and death, which is the natural condition of all life, of all existence, the Dharma. So this is a way of affirming the Dharma. And in reflecting upon this observance, I'd like to share how, well, just to set you, get you ready, but my gimmick that I more or less developed in San Francisco was to come up with acronyms for various ideas and various thoughts that to me relate to our listening to the Dharma. And so one acronym that I've been using in lieu of what traditionally we call sermons or Dharma talks is a SOB story. So instead of giving a Dharma talk, which by the way, in Japanese, it's interesting to hear, or it was interesting to me anyway, how in Japanese we say ho wa, Dharma, wa, speak or talk. And so we use that Japanese expression, hoa, in reference to Dharma talks or sermons. But it was pointed out to me that in the Cherokee language, the word hoa is used in reference to oral tradition of the Cherokee culture, whereby the storytellers, as they begin their story, their talk, the gathering, the people who have gathered to hear the story, respond by saying hoa, hoa, which in that context meant we're ready to listen. We're ready to listen. So I thought that was a very interesting cultural contrast. How hoa is used in reference to our Dharma talks, but then in the Cherokee tradition, it means prepared to listen, to receive and hear the story. And then Instead of talking about sermons or Dharma talks, I came up with an acronym of SOB. So in other words, the messages, the talks, reflections we share are SOB stories. Okay, and before Jay jumps in and corrects me or asks me to clean up my language, I'll point out that for me in this situation, SOB stands for sense of being, sense of being. And then in the Shin perspective, we would add okage-sama de, sense of being alive, okage-sama de. So like most of the things that we observe in our Shin tradition, they're gatherings of appreciation to acknowledge the innumerable, measureless causes and conditions that have gone into making our life possible and then receiving this life as we just recited in the three treasures, the opportunity to hear and receive the Dharma for the purpose of awakening, awakening to our oneness, the reality, the truth of our existence, not as a dogma or belief or concept, but as a sense, an experience of being alive. And so this is what I see the spring and fall Ohigan observances as a tradition that developed to help bring that sense of being alive in the midst of our everyday life, here and now. It's not sometime in the future, not some notion of the pie in the sky afterlife, but the sense of being alive, one with immeasurable life. And so to reflect upon that, I've been using this story that I happened to hear in Hawaii, so that's why I've been referring to it as my Hawaii story. It could have happened anywhere, but it was just the situation that I had heard the story when I was serving in Hawaii, and it was shared by a member at the temple I was at the time, and that's where I've always referred to it as my Hawaii story. But the story goes, and this was actually a situation that occurred to somebody. It was a third person thing that I heard. But anyway, it goes that there was a local guy that was waiting to catch a flight back to Maui from Honolulu. So he was sitting at the Inner Island terminal there, waiting for his flight. And as he was sitting in the passenger lounge, he happened to overhear a conversation behind him. And then he heard this person say, "I came to Hawaii to die. I came to Hawaii to die." And when the local guy heard it, he kind of got shook up, surprised and kind of curious or concerned as to what was happening. And so he decided that he would eavesdrop a little more. And then as he was following the conversation, it finally dawned on him that he had overheard a person that had just come in from Australia. And then coming from Australia, we would say he was speaking with an Australian accent. So in other words, in our pronunciation, the visitor said, "I came to Hawaii today." So the visitor said what he said, and the local guy heard what he heard. But this is an example to me of not being lost in translation, but missed in perception. That illustrates, how Buddhism teaches us that we are all conditioned, finite, in the sense that we are all subject to our own unique experiences and perceptions of how we interpret, how we perceive things, whether through seeing or hearing. And so realizing that we have developed these filters through which we perceive things, not necessarily as they are, but as we are, as I think, and based upon my past experiences, my, my assumptions about things. I interpret things, true or false, right or wrong, good or bad, and so forth. But to see that conditioned existence is part of the awareness of the light that illuminates those shadowy reflections, which I tend to attach my opinions and beliefs to. But in thinking about that story, as humorous to me as it was, there is a certain way of appreciating the idea of the visitor coming to die. Because in some respects, in a religious sense to me, we were born to die to the ego, the notion of me, myself, and I as an independent, unchanging entity unto myself. But in that sense of dying, or we could say transforming, there is a sense of coming to life, or we call it rebirth, in the pure land of enlightenment, the light of immeasurable life that brings us together in this spiritual sense of being one with the universe of no boundaries. And from that perspective, I often like to cite this couple things. One is when I was watching an interview of the late Stephen Hawking, the renowned physicist. And in that interview, the interviewer asked Professor Hawkins, "What do you think was happening before the Big Bang? What do you think was happening before the Big Bang?" And his response was, "No boundaries, no boundaries." And I thought, wow, that's pretty interesting. And then, I recall this other comment by the late Lieutenant Colonel Ellison Onizuka, who, as some of you might be familiar, grew up on the big island of Hawaii in the area they call of Kona. And his family was a member of the Kona Honganji, and he was active at the temple. And I understand he was the president of the Hawaii State Junior YBA. And so he and his family had pretty deep roots into our Shin tradition. So he was familiar with the term Pure Land. And so anyway, in this one biography I happened to read about Ellison Onizuka, it mentioned that he was actually able to return from a secret space mission. So actually, the Challenger tragedy in which he and his fellow astronauts died because of some kind of mechanical accident, miscalculation. But anyway, the first space mission he went on was a successful one. And that's when some of us might recall, he used to give these public speeches all around the country after the successful space mission. But anyway, in this biography, I happened to read an anecdote where it mentioned that when he returned from the first space flight, he shared with his mom this view or this sense of looking out into the universe. I felt I saw the Pure Land. I felt I saw the Pure Land. And what he added to that is he said, no boundaries, no boundaries. So I always thought, how interesting it is that this theoretical physicist, Stephen Hawking, And then this astronaut, Ellison Onizuka, described their sense of seeing the reality of the physical world, at least, as a space of no boundaries. And to me, that idea of no boundaries is another way of describing what we could understand as the Pure Land. The Pure Land in which all the relative mental constructs, all the distinctions and separations that we create in our self-centered thinking, border walls, barriers, polarization, that all contribute to the conflicts, to the sense of fear because of that sense of separation, isolation, or even alienation. And so we see this playing out day in and day out. Most recently, the tragedy in Georgia of this young man seeing or feeling the sense of alienation, isolation from his perceived notion of the other. These Asian women who happen to be the object of his fear, his anger, his hostility towards the other, losing any sense of connection with the common humanity, the common sense of being we all share as mortal, finite human beings. So the Pure Land is not some place we go to, in my view, after we die, but it's some place we realize, come to appreciate as a sense of being alive within and one with what we call immeasurable life, immeasurable light, Amida. So Namu Amida Butsu, as you have inscribed in your Onaijin as the Honzon at the Watsonville Buddhist Temple, affirms that spirit, the awareness, the sense of being one with in Namu Amida Butsu. Namu is the finite, limited, fallible, mortal beings that we are, that entrust ourselves to the sense of being one with, sustained by Amida Butsu, the awakening of immeasurable light and life in gratitude. So this is how we continue week in, week out, month to month, throughout the year, gather to listen to the Dharma, to be able to come alive and awaken to living within the light of immeasurable life. And so I didn't put this on the PowerPoint, but I'll just close with this acronym, which actually I composed around the time of the, it's over a year and a half now since the World BWA Convention in San Francisco. But as some of you might recall, the theme of that was live the Nembutsu. And so for that, I thought of this acronym of live. Okay, is that showing up okay, technicians? Okay, love, inspire, value, engaged. Love, inspire, value, engage. So aside from love, I could think of listen. Listen to the Dharma, realize the inspiration and the value of this life through which we are able to hear the Dharma, which engages us with universal, immeasurable life. Namo Amida Butsu. Namo Amida Butsu. Namo Amida Butsu. Thank you for listening. Stay safe, stay sane, and enjoy being SOBs. Namo Amida Butsu. Namo Amida Butsu. Namo Amida Butsu. Aloha.
Thank you so much, Reverend Kobata. That was wonderful. I always enjoy your Hoa Dharma messages, and I say Hoa Hoa. The your perspective is always enlightening for me, and I really appreciate it. Thank you so much. I was a little concerned when I heard SOB. I thought, oh, he's going to talk about me. But thank you. That was great insight. Okay. You know, today, Reverend Kobata, the temples of the Central Coast, I guess you'd call it, the Monterey, Watsonville, and Salinas are all co-hosting today's service. And so on behalf of all three temples, I want to express our deepest gratitude for you, not only today and taking time from your time with your family up there, but all the years that you've been with the Buddhist Churches of America and the Buddhist Churches of Hawaii, and your dedication to the Jodo Shinshu teachings. So on behalf of all of our members, we thank you from the bottom of our hearts. Thank you so much.
Thank you. おかげさまで。Namo Amida Butsu.
Before we close today, I want to make a few announcements. Next week, we have our Salinas Buddhist Temple Shotsuki Hoyo, and that'll be at 10 o'clock, and it'll be on the same website, the YouTube channel. And then I do want to remind everybody that 2 weeks from now will be the Watsonville's Shotsuki Hoyo at 10 o'clock on the same channel. A couple announcements about events coming up in May, beginning with our Gotai service. So on May 16th, the Coast District Temples together will be hosting a Gotai service. It'll be at 10 o'clock a.m. and you'll be able to see the service on YouTube, and the link will be on our websites. Our special guest speaker will be Reverend Grant Kakuta of the Steveston Buddhist Temple. And following the service, there'll be a discussion with Reverend Ikuta on Buddhist foundation in the Nembutsu teachings. So I am very excited about that service on the 16th. And then again in May, the Watsonville Buddhist Temple will be hosting a virtual play. That virtual play is called The Betrayed. It is a 2-act play written by the late Hiroshi Kashiwagi, and it chronicles the life of 2 young people who enter Tule Lake concentration camp, fall in love, and then have a falling out because of the controversial questions of loyalty. And then Act 2 brings them back together years later when reparations are being discussed. And there's a reconciliation. There's a better understanding of the difficulties during that time in Tule Lake. And so this play will be on Zoom, sponsored by the Watsonville Buddhist Temple. You can buy tickets on eventbrite.com, or you can contact our office for more information. So I hope you'll all join us for this great opportunity to hear or see a virtual play by from the late Hiroshi Kashiwagi. Oh, I'm sorry. Following that, there'll be a discussion with Satsuka Ina and Shoji Kashiwagi, the son of Hiroshi. Okay. And now I'd like to ask you all to join me in the Gatha Ondok-san too. The bliss, tranquil, and uncreated of the Pure Land in the West is ultimately free and peaceful, far removed from being and non-being. Namo Amida Butsu. 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 Thank you very much, everyone, for tuning in to our Spring Ohigan service for the three temples of Salinas, Monterey, and Watsonville. And a special shout out to Reverend Kobata for his wonderful talk today, his hoa, and sharing his time and his insight on Ohigan with all of us here today. We want to remind everybody again about services next week on our YouTube channel. Okay? This will conclude our services today. I'm gonna turn around here. So again, Reverend Kobata, thank you so much.
Wow. Oh,
You can see our fondo is full today.
okay. How much those
Virtually.
things cost? How much those cutouts cost? Oh,
Oh, you want to know how much the cutouts? Oh, I thought we were done with cutouts. Okay. Oh,
how much those things cost to make?